actually traveled to Vietnam for a year to work as an IELTS examiner and IELTS preparation teacher. So it's a topic I like a lot. I've always been interested in this type of exams. And so I'd like to share with you some information about IELTS. Well, first, we're going to be talking about the generalities of the exam. We're going to be talking about the scores. We're going to be talking about the components. If you haven't made a decision what to take, academic or general exam, maybe I can give you some information. And right after that, we're going to be talking about some very, very generally, because of time, we're going to be talking about the many mistakes that candidates make without noticing, or because they normally don't prepare themselves for the exam. They go to IELTS without any further preparation, and then they make mistakes that could be easily avoided. So we're going to be talking about that. And finally, towards the end of the presentation, we have a few practical exercises, very little exercises, and hopefully we can cover all these in this half an hour. So well, let's begin. Okay, let me begin here. So first, important to know a little bit of information about, in general, about the exam. Which test do you need to take? That's an important decision. So I would like to show you what are the differences between academic and general training. They are in general very similar. You will notice, and there is a little note here, listening and speaking are pretty much the same. Writing and reading are the ones that differ. So I'm going to show you a little bit. You notice listening is the same. It's basically for recording monologues or conversations. It takes about half an hour. It's the first session of the exam. Then after that, we have reading, which is about 60 minutes, an hour. And if you notice, there are little differences, of course, that the texts that you will find in academic and in general training are different, but in all cases, they are from authentic material. The difference is basically that in general, you will find more information from newspapers, from handbooks, from brochures, this type of information. So they are usually shorter text. On the contrary, academic is of course longer text, more academic, and again, usually scientific type of journals, but from different topics. You can have globalization, you can have psychology, you can have something from economics, biology. It can be really any topic from journals or scientific journals.
Good morning.
Around the world. Good morning. Hello. Good. That is the second session of the exam, and it's 60 minutes. Okay. After that, you are going to continue with the writing. The writing is again different for academic and general. If you notice, it's 60 minutes and 60 minutes. Well, the time is the same, but the difference is basically in academic writing, you are going to be doing a graph description. So you are given a visual or an infographic, a map, a bar graph, a chart graph, or this type of information, and you have to write a description. So there are important things to know about that, like how to write an overview. It's important to only describe information, not to give explanations or conclusions or predictions that are not in the graph. It's only a description. That's very important in writing task 1, academic. And for writing task 1, general, you're going to have to write a letter. Normally it's like a letter format type of writing. That can be personal or impersonal or formal letter. Sometimes, or no, in most cases, I've seen more business letters, this type of letters. So of course you have to use very formal writing. You have to be careful with the tone. You have to be careful with the register you use. I mean, think about who is it that you're writing to, because it's not the same when you're writing to your grandma in a different city, or you're writing to the dean of the university, or you're writing to the manager of a restaurant that you want to complain because of a service that you didn't like. So in this type of writing, they are going to pay attention to that. The examiner is going to be paying attention to the tone and the vocabulary that you're using, depending on the type of writing. In both cases, 150 words, and usually it's suggested that you should take about 20 minutes doing that piece of writing. The second part is the essay. In both cases, you have to write an essay, but the topics are going to be a little bit different. So that's kind of the difference between academic and general. And finally, we have the speaking, which is usually before or after the exam, sometimes on the same day of the exam. And it takes about 11 to 14 minutes. And it has three parts. One where you're going to be talking about something personal. The second part, which is a monologue. You have to talk about that topic for 2 minutes. And you are given 1 minute to think about what you're going to say. And finally, a discussion with the examiner based on that topic in part 2. So this is pretty much the structure of the exam. Again, if you have questions, please write them on the chat and we can look at your questions at the end of the session. Well, this is information about how the bands are organized. And this is pretty much what you will see. In IELTS, you might get, you are going to get individual marks for individual bands for each skill, and then an overall band, which is an average of the 4 skills. And what do they mean? Basically, of course, you can have half marks. For example, you can have 6.5, which is a 6, a little bit higher, or a 5.5 or something like that. So that's this is pretty much the description that you will see. So you can see yourself there if they are asking you for a 6 or a 6.5 or a 7. Now you know what is it that they expect from you. This is quite clear, I think, in terms of most universities in Colombia ask for 5 or 6. Most universities abroad, like master's degrees, you're gonna have to get usually 7, 7.5, 6.5 to 7.5. That's usually the average. About the question that Angie made before, was Angie, I think. Can you pass or not pass the IELTS? It depends on what you require. Really, you don't have to think about like, I didn't pass IELTS. No, well, basically it's about what is the university requiring, or the place where you, well, the reason why you need the exam is that's the reason, or that's the band that you need. And basically the IELTS is not like passing, it doesn't have a passing or a failing score. So it depends. That's why I'm giving you kind of some ranges there. But you have to always check with the university or the place, if it's immigration purposes or whatever, you have to always check with them what is the band that you need. Because it depends. Right, so I'm gonna move on from there. So why do you need to prepare for IELTS? I think it's very important to understand that it's different to be able to speak a language or to use a language, but another thing is having the test taking skills. What is it that you need to do, all the strategies, all the tips that you need in order to take the exam? So why do you need to take or to prepare for IELTS? Of course, whether you do it with us or at home or with a private teacher, whatever you want to do, but prepare for the exam. This is the main message that I want to give you today. The exam is not a difficult exam, but it gets very difficult if you're not prepared. It's still very demanding. Not saying that's the reality. It's a very demanding exam, but if you don't prepare yourself for it, it's going to be even harder. So important. Why is it that you prepare for an exam like this? Whether it's this one or any other international exam, to build confidence so that you feel more comfortable when you're taking the exam, to familiarize yourself with the exam format, the type of questions, the assessment, what is it the examiner expects from you when you're taking the exam. Also, to be equipped with some of the tools for success, of course, not only for IELTS, but for any other international exam and for further studies. For example, how to take notes, how to write a summary, spelling, how to write an essay. Those are things that, of course, you can use we say transferable skills, skills that you can use in other subjects. To be provided with essential information about the exam, I think that's very important. Sometimes, as I told you before, people make mistakes that are very silly, like not following the instructions. If the instruction says one word or a number, then just write one word. And people write 3 words, and that is a mistake, is easily avoided. And to identify strengths and weaknesses. And this is, I think, one of the most important aspects. When you prepare for IELTS, then you realize what is it that you need to review, you need to revise before you take the IELTS, so you don't get frustrated when you take it. As I told you before, some or many candidates, it's actually very common. Many people lose valuable marks just because they are making silly mistakes that could be easily avoided. For example, I'm just going to mention some of them. Not continue listening, for example, in the listening, as usually they play with you a little bit, they make tricks, they say something, okay, we're going to meet at 7, and then they say, no, actually at 9. Oh, you know what, yeah, 7:30 is fine. And then if you say 7, you write 7, and then, oh, you stop listening. No, you have to continue listening. Not following instructions, for example, the number of words. In writing, for example, you have to write at least 250 words in the essay. Please write at least 250 words. You have to make sure you have those number of words. Otherwise, you're going to be penalized. Making mistakes when transferring answers. For example, from the listening, the paper, to when you're writing in your paper, transferring the answers to the answer sheets. Some people make mistakes, which are, again, very silly, but that happens. Not checking spelling or grammar. Some people, when they finish writing, for example, they don't read, they don't proofread. That's another one here, similar. They don't proofread, and then they have some silly mistakes that they know already. They know how to write whatever word, but because they didn't read the text again, they have problems. Very important in academic writing task 1, as I told you before, not writing an overview. In the course, normally it's a good idea that you familiarize yourself with the rubrics, evaluation rubrics. These are the papers, the documents that examiners use to evaluate candidates. And the overview, for example, is one aspect that is present there in the rubric. There is a clear overview. So if you want to be a 7, you have to have an overview. Do you know what that is in a graph description? Well, it's important that you prepare yourself for that. Or in writing task 1, not including the 3 bullet points that you're given. Some people just cover 2 of them, or just do something different, and they don't do exactly what they say, but do something different. So again, be careful with that. Failing to plan. You don't plan for the writing, especially. We tend to be, Latin Americans, we tend to be romantic, and we go, and we don't plan, but we just go spontaneously writing about what we feel is interesting or relevant. But then at the end, the structure of the essay, for example, is not organized. So that's something that is going to be evaluated. So don't let this happen to you, right? You see the graph here? Sales are decreasing dramatically. And then they say, well, now we know what not to do. So don't let this happen to you. Hopefully you can identify what are those mistakes that silly mistakes that you're making, so that you can have a better score in your exam. I would like to move on real quick to some practical exercises. Okay, we only have 5 minutes, so I'm gonna have to move. Okay, so real quick, this is about true, false, or doesn't say, or not given type of questions in IELTS. I would like you to look at these 3 sentences. Actually, I'm going to move with 2 because of time. What can you identify, please? Can you identify the keywords or the differentiating words in the following sentences? If you're looking for information in the text, what is it you're going to pay more attention to in these sentences? Not only 1 and 2. We don't have a lot. Oh, well, if you want, do number 3. Please use the chat to write what is the keyword in these 3 sentences. What is, when you're reading, trying to find something that is true or false or not given in the text, what are the words that you should be paying attention to? Use the chat, please. Okay, Mateo's writing something interesting. Okay, yes. Okay, networking is an important word in that sentence. I agree with you. But what is differentiating when you are reading? What is it that you have to pay attention to? Of course, networking, because probably that's a keyword that you have to look for, scan in the text and find. Okay, we have something from Jamie. Good. I'm going to show you the answers. So in the first one, although I understand why you're writing networking, in this specific sentence, networking is not a modern idea. You have to look for the information in the text that is going to help me find that this is a negative, or as opposed to possibly being positive in the text. You see, because I'm talking about reading. Again, maybe you already found that paragraph that is talking about networking, if we're talking about reading, but you're going to have to pay attention to something that is not a modern idea. If it's networking, then you know it's true or false. My network is not that great, you see, my internet, but okay. Number 2, people fall into 2 basic categories. So you have to find what determines 2 as a specific number of categories. What is in the text? It says 2, it says 3. So that's why I'm talking about these keywords or differentiating words in the text. So these are types of exercises that you should be doing. In number 3, there are 2 differentiating words like you have to pay attention to in the text. And that one is first and the other one is little. Some people said actually little, and again, why little? Because maybe because that has a negative connotation. It's not a little, it's little. It's less than sufficient, it's less than enough. So that's an important word there to pay attention to. I'm going to move on to another exercise. This is easier. I would like you to analyze this meme, this infographic. What do you understand from this? Why punctuation matters? Some people find inspiration in cooking their families and their dogs. Others find inspiration in cooking their families and their dogs. What did you notice? Again, use the chat, please. What is the problem in the first sentence? We're talking about what? Cannibalism, right? Where, yes, is a question. Yes, the person likes to eat families, well, his or her families and dogs. Yes, comas. This can be applied in speaking or in writing. Commas, like pauses, when you write, you have to write the pauses so the person that reads actually pause when you are back, or you want them to stop. And exactly, punctuation is a problem. And in the second sentence, of course, there is a good structure of the text. It's clear they like cooking, one hobby, but also they have inspiration in their families, not the 2 ideas together. This is very important in IELTS to know how to use punctuation. Also in speaking, because when you stop, we're going to have an exercise. No, we don't have the time for that exercise. But it's important that you understand sentence stress and chunking, that is putting words together. For example, in speaking, it's very important that you expand upon when it's appropriate. Some people just answer the questions with yes, no, but they don't say a little bit more. Remember, for example, in speaking, you have to show all you can do, or your talent in speaking. So show a little bit more. What do you do? So only I am a teacher, that's fine, it's correct. but I could say I have been a high school mathematics teacher in New York and Colombia and Bogota for over 5 years. See, so it's different because you're giving a little bit more. This is very important in speaking. If you don't mind, I'm gonna take 3 more minutes to try to finish maybe 2 more exercises. I'm sorry, I know it's only half an hour, but I really would like to give you some more information. I don't know if it's okay with you. Thank you. Thank you, Elena. All right, good. Signposting. Signposting is, okay. Signposting is another important aspect that you're going to have to use in speaking and writing. This is again in two skills. Signposting is key in IELTS exam. For example, in terms of some expressions, or you should be familiar with some expressions for generalizing or distancing. You see there are some examples here, generally or broadly speaking, or it seems to me. Those are very important again for your essay or for your speaking, for your interview. Creating pauses when you can't remember a word, or sometimes to just think about the next idea, compare and contrast, speculating about the future. So this signposting is very important because the person who is listening will know what you're doing with your spoken or written text. Where is it that you're going? What is it that you're going to do? Disagree, agree, or respond, or what is it? Okay. Use of synonyms as well. Very important in IELTS exam. In writing, of course, in speaking, very important, so that you are able to not repeat yourself, not to be boring, not to say the same thing again, but also in listening and reading, because remember, in listening and reading, sometimes they are going to use synonyms, they are going to paraphrase. So you're going to have to pay attention to the same words because they are going to paraphrase in order to find the answers. So that's very useful. These are some examples here for using synonyms. Again, something that you should be preparing yourself for. Well, I don't have a lot of more time. I'm going to steal one last minute from you. I would like to do this activity real quick. I don't know, I could ask one of you, any volunteers? I would like you to read this sentence out loud, or this sentence, not but this short paragraph. Any volunteer?
Me.
Maria, okay. Oh, sorry, there is a volunteer. Go ahead. Who's talking?
Mateo.
Mateo, please go ahead. I would like you to, Mateo, please read this paragraph. Please stop where the line is, right? Don't, if you notice, there is no punctuation. So I would like you to stop where the line is, all right? At the end of each sentence, a very short pause, of course. Please go ahead, Mateo.
Okay. Does it really matter whether people speak with an accent as long as they can be easily understood? Many people now believe that in an increasingly globalized world and should accept variations in pronunciation that is accent. However, there is no point accent. However, there is no point in speaking with an accent if people can't understand you is there.
Many people, thank you very much, Mateo. Many people ask me in the courses, it's okay if I speak a British accent or American accent? Accent is not evaluated in English in the IELTS. However, it's important that you have a clear or good chunking and pausing. That's very important. With a prosody in linguistics, that's the rhythm of the language, right? The pauses that are necessary. Mateo, I'm going to ask you to read this sentence again. This line, only one line, means a short pause. 2 lines means a longer pause. Still not very long, but longer. Okay, can you please read now this text with this pausing?
Okay. Does it really matter wherever people speak with an accent, as long as they can
With an
be
accent?
easily understood. Many people, many people now believe that in an increasingly globalized world,
Global
we should accept
life?
variations in pronunciation. That is accent. However, there is no point in speaking with an accent if people can't understand you, is there?
Is there, right? So notice punctuation is very important. And again, as I said, chunking and pausing, having some emotions when you speak, using rhythm, speaking naturally. Some people speak neutral and they don't use any intonation. You have to play a little going up and down. And that, of course, is going to be, is going to help you in your speaking exam. Well, so I had another activity, but I think I'm going to have to skip it. Of course, why preparing with us? Of course, because we have designed these courses. IELTS experts have designed these courses. They are delivered, but most of us are previous IELTS examiner or well prepared, of course, or experienced English teachers. We covered all the 4 parts. We're going to give you lots of practical hints and tips. We're going to give you, we'll share with you some relevant information. You're going to get some exam practice. And of course, because of the international is the official test center, so you're going to have the information firsthand. So lastly, before we move on to questions, the most important message that I want to leave for you: prepare yourself for IELTS, but practice, practice, and practice, because that's the only way you can actually achieve a better score. There is no other way. There is no magic formula. All right. So if there are some questions, I noticed one at the beginning. Okay. Carolina is asking me about the overview. I don't know if there are more questions. I'm going to start with Carolina's question, if there are no more at the moment. Well, so Carolina was asking me, writing an overview. An overview is the most important feature in a graph description. If you're taking academic exam, this is important for you. In writing task 1, you have to write an overview. Again, it's in the rubric, so it's going to be evaluated by the examiner. They are going to be looking at the overview. And the overview is usually the most interesting or the most striking feature from the graph. So for example, if you have line graphs, bar charts, bar graphs, the fact that they all increase or that they all decrease or these type of things. The most striking feature is usually the overview. It's usually 1 or 2 sentences that you write, whether in the first paragraph after the introduction or at the end of the description, like as a conclusion. That's the overview. Of course, you would have to look at it into details, but that's in general an overview, and it's very important for academic writing task 1.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. What happens if, for example, in the writing part 1, you write 5 more words or 5 less words than the number required? Okay. So what happens if you write less or more in writing task 1 or in writing task 2, because it's the same? Writing tasks in both. What is my recommendation? Write a little bit more than is expected. So, because the examiner is going to check that you have at least that. Is the examiner going to be impressed if you write a lot more? For example, if you have to write 250 words and you write 300, the examiner is not going to be impressed. It's just, I mean, it's their responsibility to read the whole thing, but that's it. It's not like, oh, nice that they actually managed to write more. But it's actually, I think, it's a disadvantage for you because you can have that time to review, to check, to proofread your text. So I think it's not a good idea. So I actually ask you or suggest to you that you write a little bit more. For example, 10 more words, write 160 words. So to make sure that you have enough. If you write less, you are going to be penalized and harshly because it's in the instructions. So please don't write less. Don't count word by word. Count the number of words that you have and calculate the average that you usually write per line. So that's why it's important to practice, so that you know how many words you usually write in each line, so you have an idea on what a text with 150 words looks like. But again, write a little bit more. It's better to be a little bit more, not too much, a little bit more, but no less words, okay? Because you're going to be penalized if you write less, only if you write less. Are there more questions? I don't see more questions. Any other questions? No, no hay más preguntas. Sí, qué pena, si yo dije que iba a hablar en español y en inglés y se me olvidó por completo, pero bueno, si hay alguna duda.
No, en realidad no. Muchas gracias por toda la información, muy, muy importante, muy valiosa.
Gracias a ustedes. Entonces, bueno, Fabio, no sé si quieras decirles ya algo para terminar. Es un gusto y gracias por estar aquí un sábado en la mañana. Claro, nos pueden escribir al WhatsApp para pues, ayudarlos con alguna duda. Está el correo para que se contacten con las personas de OSI. Gracias por estar aquí un sábado en la mañana, de verdad que les agradezco mucho y de verdad que la mejor de las, o el mayor éxito en su examen. Por favor, prepárense antes de tomarlo, eso sí es muy importante. Les aseguro que eso va a hacer la diferencia y no se van a sentir de pronto frustrados con el examen porque es complejo. Bueno, Karen nos dice que si tienen algún tema de preguntas más específicos con la administración del examen, las fechas, los lugares, por favor, ahí hay el correo y un número de teléfono. A todos ustedes, muchísimas gracias. Okay, thank you very much.
Daisy, muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Lo mismo a todos los participantes, esperamos que nos escriban para ya resolver más dudas, todas las inquietudes que tengan. Les enviamos información de talleres de preparación que estamos realizando en todas las ciudades a nivel Colombia virtualmente, y para el envío de ejercicios e información sobre las fechas que se van a reanudar del examen IELTS. Esperamos nos escriban a estos correos en el chat. Muchas gracias por su asistencia. Esperamos poder colaborarles. Es importantísimo como consejo practicar muchísimo. Hemos notado que muchos pueden estar por encima del puntaje deseado si practican. No es solo alcanzar el puntaje requerido, sino superarlo. Esperamos que nos escriban para resolverles todas sus inquietudes y poder colaborarles. Muchas gracias por su asistencia. Feliz fin de semana y cuídense mucho. No sé si Karen quiere agregar.
Pues les voy a dar como una información adicional a lo que ya les dijo Daisy en cuanto a las instrucciones. No solo son las instrucciones que les están dando en los booklets o en el computador para los que lo van a hacer en el computador, sino las que les están diciendo las personas que los están cuidando. Entonces, la parte en la que escriben, si les dicen paren de escribir, tienen que soltar el lápiz, el borrador, todo, porque si siguen escribiendo, nosotros estamos obligados a dejar un reporte de que este candidato, con este número de candidato, siguió escribiendo por 3 segundos y eso les puede descontar puntos. En la parte del computador y cuando lo hacen en papel, que el tiempo para ir al baño no es tiempo adicional. Si ustedes van al baño, es tiempo de ustedes, no tienen tiempo de ir a comer. Entonces, el tiempo del examen va a seguir corriendo. Entonces, es importante conocer no solo lo que está en las hojas o tienen que hablar o tienen que escribir, sino también escuchar las instrucciones que les están dando las personas que los están cuidando para que no vayan a perder tiempo en esas cosas y vayan preparados, bien desayunados, ir al baño antes, llevar el lápiz, borrador, sacapuntas, ir con ropa cómoda, sin buzos con capotas. O sea, hay que leer las instrucciones desde que se les envía la citación.
Gracias, Karen, por el complemento. Muy bien. Bueno, muchas gracias a todos entonces y estamos a la orden para sus preguntas y de nuevo pues que puedan obtener el puntaje deseado o aún más que eso, que es lo importante. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Muy buen fin de semana.